What have you found to be the keys to creating successful project collaborations?
I think a lot of open communication and having really clear goals or outcomes for what you want the project to look like. I think those are the most important items that you need to have a successful project collaboration. I've worked a lot with different researchers all over the world, a lot of different countries, a lot of different viewpoints and backgrounds. And now I work with a lot of different political backgrounds. And at least if you have a sense of where you'd like the project to go and have some clear objectives and goals. And, it sounds stupid, but a lot of times I've been in situations where you don't even know what the research is going to say at the end. So you don't really have an objective except that you want to look at a particular question. You have no idea what the answer is going to be. And it can be very nerve-wracking for people because people like to know what the answer is going to be at the end. But without doing the research, you don't know what the answer is going to be. So people get very anxious about that. And at least having the communication and having the talk about, these are the potential outcomes. This is what we'd like to do with the research. And I think, in terms of the goal, there's the goal of having the project completed, but there's also the goal of why the heck are we doing this research? What are we planning on doing with it? And making people feel like they're a part of something. I definitely am of the school of a little bit of overshare in terms of projects. It doesn't matter if you're a high level or a grunt. I want you to understand what your role in a project is. Mm-hmm. And so I spent, when I did a lot of research, I would work with some of the, the programmers who their job was just code the statistics up. And I would sit down with them and say, these are the larger goals, these are larger research questions. A lot of the other researchers would just say, run these t-tests for me and give me the results. And I would, spend the extra half an hour saying, this is why we're doing this project, these are what the objectives are. And I think a lot of the staff I work with appreciate that because it doesn't take that much extra time and then they understand. And I had a situation where we had a programming error that predated my joining the project by several years. And the programmer that I worked with actually caught the error and said, there's a particular algorithm to score this questionnaire and an entire question had gotten dropped. So the algorithm no longer worked. And, we were getting some funny results, but I couldn't really figure out why. And she actually noticed it because she was in the computer code, like programming the questions up. And she came to me and said, as opposed to just spitting out the results and here's your number, goodbye, she said, well, you told me you were interested in this particular algorithm. And I looked at the published algorithm. I looked at ours and there's a question missing. It's supposed to be 36 questions, only 35. And, had we not sat down and explained to her why this particular algorithm was the one to use versus a different one, she would have just looked at the numbers, had no idea what the context was and said, okay, the number's 7. Is that good? Is that bad? I have no idea. Mm-hmm. So it can really help save a project later on, and we had to do a lot of extra programming to account for this error. But it's programming is never that exciting. But that was great that we spent some extra time explaining to them, and so. When
did you realize that oversharing was a good thing?
I think I'm a little bit of an oversharer to begin with, but I think also I've worked with people who are just very much, this is your job, do it. And it felt very unsatisfying to me. So I sort of like to put myself in those shoes and say, oh, remember back to this job where, my boss would be in their office, I'd be in my cubicle, and I had no idea, number one, what they were doing. They could have been having a dance party in their office for all I knew. And I had no idea why I was doing certain tasks. And then I would, 6 months later, I'd see a press release and be like, oh, there's my number. I had no idea what it's for. And it felt, I think if you're intellectually curious, you want to ask questions. And I think people don't go into research if they're not curious. And so I think one of the things that's important is fostering that curiosity and not just saying, I think you can get so overwhelmed with the amount of work that you have to do that you just want to assign tasks, delegate out and be like, okay, I shot an email to you. I spent my 30 seconds assigning you your job. You should just get it done so we can move things forward. That felt very unsatisfying to me. So, I like to try to do things a little bit differently. And people they're always welcome to tell me, shut up, I know what I'm doing and just leave me alone. And I want to just give me my work and stop telling me about all this other stuff. So I'm open to that too.